Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Edge on Good News Sports. I'm your host, Glenn Allen. In 2001, there were almost 4 million boys under the age of 19 in Canada. These young men are the future of our nation, and the fathering they receive now will have a critical influence on who they become. As your son's father, you have the privilege of speaking into his life. The question today is, as men, what are we doing with this privilege? Well, let's meet the Edge panel here on Good News Sports from the Drew Marshall Radio Show. He is Drew Marshall.
Glenn, nice to see you again, big guy.
Yeah, it's a great name for your show. I don't know where you come up with it.
Yeah.
Our next guest is the founder of Teen Ranch, and he is Mel Stevens. Mr. Stevens, good to see you.
Thank you, Glenn. Good to be here.
Welcome. Next up from Uptown Sports, he is NHL player agent Don Reynolds. He is the Don on Good News Sports.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. And anchoring the panel is none other than the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase.
Great to see you, Glenn.
Good to see you.
You bet.
Gentlemen, we are, as we sit here today, we're all fathers of boys. We are fathers. We are fathers of boys. And I guess I'm just going to start off with as men in Canada and the States. Ted, being an American, are we doing a good job? Mel, you see so many kids over the years come through Teen Ranch. Are we doing a good job?
Some are and some aren't. I did a good job, I think.
Yeah, I did a great job. I'm a perfect parent. What about you, Ted?
I know he did.
I'm a good daddy.
Are you?
But in the United States, I know that's absentee fathers is an epidemic. I mean, I'm not just talking about dads that have children and then fly the coop. I'm talking about dads that are with their families every day, but they're not engaged with their sons. They come home, they pay the paycheck, and then they sit down in front of the TV with the clicker and check out. Yeah.
That's the most frustrating thing I think I've seen with dads, and I used to be one of those idiots, was at the arenas, and you ought to know about this. Well, both of you guys are hockey nuts. The psychotic dads up in the arena. One time I chased a referee into the room at the end of the game. Not a good move.
No.
Not a good move at all. But you know what I mean? The psychotic fathers?
No, that means you are one then.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I am one of those whack jobs.
Wow.
Well, no, I used to be. I've changed.
I see.
Well,
Because your child grew up.
Yeah, and he could pound me now. So my son's 6'5", 200.
Wow.
Drop me in a heartbeat. No. But what do you think about the nutty fathers in the sports?
It's for real. Some of the dads are out there living their life through their boys.
Through the kids. It's a weird deal. And I think dads, we talked in another show about dads being fathers to girls, and there's a disconnect sometimes there. You got both. Did you find it easier raising the boy or the girls?
Well, Tim, my eldest son, was the easiest kid in the world to raise.
Really?
I had no problem. No, he's always been a good guy.
Not a rebellious streak at all?
Not a rebellious streak at all. Now, however, I thought, but he said that when he went off to Australia for a few months and came back, I think he was 19, he thought I was the stupidest guy in the world.
Well, you touched on that in another program.
Yeah,
kids reach a certain age, and all of a sudden
they become teenagers, and all of a sudden, we as parents all of a sudden become stupid. It's like we don't know what we're talking about. We're not cool. We're not with it. And it's like you try to tell them, say, look, we're giving you these boundaries, not because we don't want you to have a good time, but basically we've been down that road before. And we're trying to protect you. We're trying to keep you from making mistakes. In
raising sons today, there's a quote out there, if you will, that as guys, we're not letting our boys be boys. We're not letting them do the things
that they want to do.
For instance, let's just say we're talking about a boy wants to play with a gun or a sword or whatever. And today, being politically correct, we're taking it out of their hands and we're going, we don't do those types of things.
You take a gun out of
your
kid's hands?
No, I didn't say me. I said.
Okay.
Some of the things that I hear.
Society has changed, though. You can't play with guns and swords in urban Canada.
But you don't want okay, let's shooting straight here, the guy stuff. If you got a boy and he starts playing with dolls and wants to do ballet, does that freak you out as a dad? We're supposed to be okay with that, but does it freak you out as a dad? You had a son who wanted to do ballet, didn't you?
Going back to Tim, you're gonna have a good time next time you go to Teen Ranch because Tim's gonna pound you.
He's gonna thump me. No, what do you think about that? Because there's the macho guy thing. We want our boys to get into the tough stuff, but there are guys or boys out there.
Why do we want them to get into the tough stuff?
Because we're probably living through them and all that.
That's
Dr.
that
Phil
macho
crap
thing, and I live that. I have 3 boys, and all of my boys are athletes, but my youngest son Brett also had an interest in dancing and singing, and he in high school got into the high school's show choir, which actually happened to be like a national award-winning show choir, and he took a lot of grief from his friends, you know, because man, that just ain't cool, you know. But, you know, I told him, I said, you got to do what your heart tells you to do. And I passed along to him what my dad did with me. And one of the things that you brought up was so many dads do that, is that they try to live vicariously through their sons, and their son might not want to play hockey or football or baseball, but by gosh, you're going to be a hockey player. You know,
got to make them play.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's the worst thing you can do.
And there's another side to that too. Yeah, there are adults, especially dads, who are very insecure. And when they see I look at you when I say that. I look at one of my nephew down in Chicago, who has taken dance and ballet being part of it. He's in the theater, and he's also one of the best second basemen at 14 years old. Down there, loves sports, is a great athlete, but he loves to act too. And for his resume, he's taken all this stuff. And if you talk to him, and if someone were to call him a name, he just, whatever. Grow up.
I know a few guys on this panel who love to act as well.
Who would that be? Well, isn't that what wrestling's all about?
Hey, wait a minute.
Come on,
wait a minute. You trying to say wrestling's phony or what? Come on.
Hey, you know that I don't want to get too spiritual on you here, but there's a verse I think that says something like, "Train up your child in the way he's going to go, and then he won't depart from it later,or something like that."
No, it says when he's old.
That's it. Yeah, and don't wreck a good story with facts, Don. But a lot of parents go, "Well, that means if I shove all the Jesus stuff into them when they're young, when they get older and rebel and stuff, they'll come back and be all nice Jesus boys and stuff." I think what that really means, I've been told this by smart God guys like Mel, it really means if your kid wants to be a flippin' ballet guy, then go for it. Support them, encourage them, train them up in the way that they should go. And
so they're secure in it.
There's a supportive thing there.
Don, let me ask you this. You have 6 boys.
Yes.
Six boys.
Very proud of it, too.
Talk about twofold. Talk about the greatest part of raising 6 boys, and what was the scariest?
The smell.
I asked Don.
Oh, sorry.
Isn't he a piece of work?
He's a piece of something.
But I was appreciative of Mel, who, when just as the show opened, he said, and this guy did a good job, or whatever. I don't know what you said.
Let me just add to that. Don Reynolds is one of the best fathers I have ever known.
Wow.
I say that
easy,
sincerely.
easy. Oh, I'm out of here, man.
I say that sincerely. I've watched his boys grow up, and I've watched the way he and Trudy have raised them, and I've admired and respected him for it. So I think we should listen to Don a bit here today and see what he has to say.
I'm going to hear your answer. If they start singing Kumbaya, then you can leave.
I am gone.
Okay.
No, it's not easy. It hasn't been easy. I would say I've got a great wife. That's been a big part of it. I've been out of the home a lot. But I was out of the home a lot when we were young and the kids were young, and I was working hard, and I was out a lot at night. And I mean, she did a marvelous job with the Bible and reading to them and teaching them. And
she was a great role model, but so were you.
Well, thank you.
And what about your time? You
spent
a lot of time with
a lot of
the
time
boys.
with them, and I see
Quality
my son.
time.
Yeah, and I see my son Scott now, who has 3 sons and a daughter, doing the same thing. But an interesting thing, Drew would enjoy this, I think.
You hope.
They all played hockey, but 3 of them really displayed artistic qualities. 3 of them are artists in their own right. One is a graphic designer, another is a character designer, works in Tampa, Florida, creating cartoon characters really for in a Christian environment, and the third one is a web designer. And so they've all displayed qualities that I could never imagine that they would have ever had. In Ben's case, he always enjoyed the toys and the cartoon things, and started drawing when he was just a kid. But they all were raised in a sports environment.
Okay, but hold on. You are a successful guy. You're not, some pauper out in the street. So you're successful in business, and that requires a lot of time. People just don't, a lot of time.
Right.
Plus, you got 6 kids and 6 boys, and I've always said this.
We have a daughter too, by the way.
Sure. Let's not forget her, because that'll just come back to haunt you. But I've always found it hard to understand and really believe that someone can be a success in business the way you are. I mean, top of the league, player agent, all the NHL stuff and everything, and be a good dad, because it all requires time, and something's got to sacrifice. How'd you do it?
Someone said to me when I was a young father, no success can compensate for failure at home. And that didn't come out of the Bible, but it should be in there. If it isn't in there, Mel, can you get it in?
Mel, take care of that.
I can identify with what you're saying because, being a professional wrestler for 20 years, I traveled all the time as well. My dad was a professional wrestler, and my dad, the man who raised me, was actually my stepfather. I had a very special relationship with him, and I tried to model myself after him. And the one thing, my dad was gone a lot too, but I had a lot of good quality time with him. I mean, some of the greatest times I had as a kid growing up were when he would take me by myself and say, come on, you're going to take this trip with me, and we go. And I have done the same thing with my boys. I've taken them individually and said, come on, man, we're going to go on this trip, and we go for a week. We'd make hunting trips together, all three of us, but I always made individual time with them. And even now, still, I'll go and let's go for lunch or something. And there have been times when they were having a big game that I couldn't be there. But the morning of that game, they got a phone call from me. The afternoon of that game, they got a phone call from me. Right before the game, they got a phone call from me. They knew.
It's making those attempts. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely.
No, it's making that attempt. And actually, and I'm sorry I cut you off there, but we have to take a break. It's that attempt. It's showing them, even though it's through a phone call, I'm really busy, but you know what? I'm still thinking of you even though I'm away,
right.
and showing that love in a different way. When we come back, we're going to keep talking about fathers and sons. You're watching Good News Sports. Stay tuned. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Good News Sports. Glenn L. alongside Drew Marshall, Mel Stevens, Don Reynolds, Ted DiBiase today talking about fathers and sons. Mel, you brought up a good point during the break, and just before we get into hockey dads and talking about that, is each person on the panel has a different background when it comes to a dad. And Ted, your natural father, or your parents divorced, yeah. And you were raised by your stepdad. Yours
Parents
is
are divorced.
Divorced. Mm-hmm. You were adopted.
He was hatched.
That was a lab experiment, okay? On a rye.
And you were quote unquote normal, but yeah.
I was given up for adoption, and then I was raised by my birth parents. So I have one dad that I know, and I have a birth father who's a bit of well, there's genetic stuff there. I inherited a lot of his weirdness.
Okay.
And if you're listening and watching, hi, how are you? But surrogate dads, like when I was a ratbag to my own dad, and my dad kicked me out, and I mean rightly so. Then Mel stepped into my life and kicked my butt around, but gave me the love and support and encouragement, loved me even though I was an idiot. And I think the surrogate dad thing, is that the right phrase, surrogate dad?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. And in hockey, you're a player agent. You're like a surrogate dad to a lot of these guys,
in a big way, because not all your players are in the NHL, and you have to do that with them. But you have guys who are still playing in junior.
Sure, or even minor hockey.
Yeah. How important is that to you?
Well, it's important that a player would have the confidence to ask you certain things. I had a player call me once, and he was playing junior in the Ontario Hockey League, and he said, Don, I need to talk to you about something. I said, sure, go ahead. He said, would you promise not to tell my dad? And then we went on and talked. I said, yes, and we went on and talked about it. So certainly, we like to be there for these boys who have all sorts of issues and problems and questions and crises.
In wrestling, you've got a lot of daddies in wrestling. Vince McMahon, he'd be your daddy, wouldn't he?
Oh boy,
that's a vision I didn't need. Thanks.
Yeah, who's your daddy?
Yeah,
no.
I had a great father. Oh, I'm sorry.
One of the things that I respected and admired my dad for. My dad was not only a professional wrestler, my stepfather, the man who raised me, but he was a national amateur wrestling champion out of the University of Nebraska, and was like one of 4 athletes in the history of that school to letter like 7 or more times. So when this guy came into my life, not only was he a great dad, but he was a great athlete. He was like a role model. It was like he was my first hero. But the thing that I loved about him was that he didn't demand and didn't expect of me to do what he did. And that's the thing that really gets me about a lot of dads, and it creates a lot of problems. And I've seen a lot of guys. I played college football with a lot of guys who hated every day of it. And I said, well, why are you here? Well, my dad always wanted me to be a ball player, and it created issues. My dad always said, pursue your heart. He says, all I expect of you is to be the best that you can be at whatever your heart wants you to be.
I had a player call me once in August, right at the end of August.
What did he call you?
Just before training camp. He had been a first-round pick in the NHL draft. and he called me and said, I'm not going to training camp. And I said, oh, that's okay. Well, tell me why. He said, because I just realized this past summer that I've been playing hockey for my parents, not for myself.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah, imagine.
He walked away?
He walked away from it, yeah.
Wow.
What's it like having a normal dad?
My dad was a phenomenal role model. He was not a famous guy at all. He was a tool and die maker for 48 years, but he modeled the Christ life, Christian life, at work, at home. I think he had all kinds of wisdom. He knew that he had a son who had a bit of a rebellious nature.
Who? You?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he really knew that after I got expelled from grade 11. But
Wow.
But he just had wisdom. He not only spent a lot of time with us, he encouraged us in any endeavor that we wanted to participate in that was legal. He encouraged us. In music. He encouraged us in sports. Didn't push us, but was always there to encourage. And when we felt that God was leading us to Australia to pick up and just leave for who knows how long with a month-old son, his first grandson, he said, Mel, it's tough, but if that's the way God's leading you, then you go with my blessing. And so I was very, very blessed to have a father.
It's so important for dads. We can talk all we want, but if we're not walking the talk, it isn't worth a dime. It's worth nothing. We were talking earlier about hockey dads, and Don, you bring up a really good point, because we don't want to paint all hockey dads or parents with the same brush. There are a lot of really good, dedicated people who spend time in the rinks, at the ball fields, gymnastics, whatever the sport may be, theater, whatever. Those parents, yeah, okay. Is that personal for you? Talk about some of the guys that
hockey dads
you work
are
with.
great. 9 out of 10 hockey dads are great. And I was saying earlier, one of the reasons is that if you're playing at the elite level, even if you're a peewee hockey player, you're playing maybe 100 games a year. You're going to have 2 practices for every game, maybe 3. So a dad has a chance to be together with his son 300 times a hockey season. And I can turn the clock back myself and think about all the times we had in the car together, coming back from tournaments or going to games or whatever. And not every situation was your counseling or your, whatever, bonding. I mean, you're just being a dad.
Yeah.
But, we've looked after the Primo family for 15 or more years. And Keith and Wayne have always had a great model in their parents. The Fishers, Jim Fisher, who's Mike's dad. And I could go down the list. Rob Globke, his dad, and they've got, I think, 4 boys. Just great people.
Do you think we push our boys more than we push our girls? Is there something about our boys, if they turn out like jerks, that reflects on us as dads, so we push our boys more than we push our girls?
That's a good point.
Do you think that's a real deal, or
it's
no?
probably true. Yeah,
It's probably true.
Yeah.
What do you think? You got both. So what do you think?
I don't think I've pushed my kids. I've encouraged them. And again,
There's a difference there.
My dad was a
An
model.
important
Good
difference.
point, yeah.
My dad modeled it, so I learned from my father. And so I didn't push any of them. I tried to encourage them in any endeavor that they wanted to participate in. There's another point
Okay,
that
go ahead.
there may be a lot of single moms watching this who are thinking, I wish my kids had a dad. Got any advice for them? My second marriage, my first wife died. My second wife was a single mom for 13 years. She had to take the role of a father as well and be at the rink at 5:30 in the morning.
tough.
And
how does the boy or girl? We're talking sons today, but how does that affect? I mean, you don't have perfect families in the guys that you're dealing with.
No.
What do you? I guess that's a part of a role that you play. You hope that a coach comes along. We know that there are some predators and what have you out there. I mean, we've read in the paper and it's been in the news for the last number of years. Different people take advantage, but there's a lot of good guys out there who coach and spend time because they actually care.
To Mel's question directly, I think there's the single moms who are doing the deal. I just hands down. I mean, hats off, hands down. I think you're just amazing that you can do what you're doing.
Absolutely.
But do not settle for the first doofus that comes along, because there's already enough, as you said, doofus dads already in the scene doing nothing anyway.
Yeah.
So if it's going well and it's just you, Cool. Let's let it go that way. Don't sacrifice. Don't let the first country song, walking country song that comes by, you know, suck you into their life.
And the other thing too. I mean, for a hockey player, and I'm not just saying this because Mel's here, but if you're a single mom out there and you're looking for even a hockey school or a place to send your son for a couple of weeks, Teen Ranch.
Yeah. And if you can't afford it as a single mom, don't worry about that. We accept any child who applies, and if you don't have the finances, we'll sponsor them.
Wow. You know, and for the guys that do it, one of the things that we do, I mean, like, you know, a lot of my friends at home and, you know, neighbors that we have, they call my house Hotel DiBiase. You know, I've got 3 boys, but we have like in some summers. I mean, one summer I had seven college students, you know, that were going to school with one of my boys, staying there that summer. You know, it was like a zoo. But we have opened our home to a lot of kids who are less fortunate, who don't have father figures, and try to help where we can. So
let me ask you really quickly. We have about a minute left. Your boy, we talk about following our footsteps. In your particular case, knowing what wrestling is all about today, especially in the McMahon world, your boys are following in your footsteps to some degree. Do you want to see them go down that road?
Not necessarily, but at the same time, I'm not gonna break their spirit, and I'm not gonna break their dream. And when it came right down to it, my son looked at me and said, "Dad," he says, "I love who you are in Jesus Christ." And he says, "I got a college education, I got a degree, I honored you." He says, "But what you don't understand is you've always been my hero. And I've always wanted to be just like you. And the ministry that you have today and the doors that are open for you today are based on who you were in that world. Why can't I do that too?"
And you know
what do I say to that?
We need more heroes out there. We need guys coming to the plate, stepping up and being the heroes in their sons' lives. Guys, we have to take another break. Back with more Good News Sports right after this. Welcome back to the program. Guys, be honest. Some of us try to relive our lives through our sons, pushing them to play sports and activities they don't really want to play. We need to encourage them to follow their hearts, not push them to live our dreams.